morning, everyone, and welcome to the Fiber Broadband Association's Five for Breakfast. We're now on our 48th episode of 2025, if you can believe that. Before I kick off, I'd like to thank Wesco, the platinum sponsor of Five for Breakfast. Before we begin, I'd like to just wish everyone a very happy Thanksgiving. For my family, Thanksgiving is one of the biggest holidays of the year, as this holiday is all about family and friends, and Thanksgiving provides an opportunity to reflect on the important relationships and to give thanks for all the people who have been so incredibly important to each one of us. I'm very fortunate to have such a wonderful family, and I'm also so thankful for the amazing team we have at the Fiber Broadband Association and our wonderful community of members. I'm also so blessed to have the best job in the world, so I got that going for me. So in the spirit of being thankful, we're also excited for the state broadband offices in the 20 states that have received their final BEAD approval. This has been a 4-year plus effort by many of these state offices, and for the staff at NTI have been working tirelessly for these last 4+ years. So we are encouraged that the states will now be able to begin implementation of the BEAD plans shortly after NTI's approval. You have to have the NIST completes its review, which will take a maximum about 20 days. And then the states formally accept, sign the required terms and conditions, and off to the races. So we've already seen Louisiana. Congratulations to Vineet and Thomas. And we'll see these all 20 states up and going. And I guess there's 36 more to go. And on Monday this week, President Trump signed an executive order creating the Genesis Mission, a federal initiative to accelerate scientific breakthrough in artificial intelligence. This is pretty exciting. So it already directs the Department of Energy to build the American Science and Security Platform, a centralized digital platform that integrates federal databases, private sector computing, and academic research expertise. The order doesn't reference broadband or BEAD. I know there's a lot of people in Congress that were worried about that. So it didn't reflect any of that. And we're going to continue to monitor the implementation and see this exciting initiative. Also, mark your calendars for the Fiber Broadband Association's second annual Public Policy Summit in Washington, D.C. on Tuesday, February 24th. It was a great event last year. We had a number of great speakers from the Hill and the Energy and Commerce in particular, and also FCC and NTI. And the White House. So we look forward to doing that again this year. And then right over after we get through eating our turkey and the Thanksgiving holiday, we're all heading to Palm Springs for our premier member meeting on December 8th and 9th. This is my favorite event of the year as we reflect on our industry's accomplishments in 2025 and finalize our plans for the upcoming year. Our team has been working very hard on our 2026 plan, and I could not be more excited for what we have in store for our members and industry. 2026 is shaping up to be one of the biggest, if not the biggest year yet for our industry. Speaking of 2026, the Fiber Broadband Association will be kicking off our regional Fiber Connect workshop with Oklahoma City being the first on Thursday, February 5th at the Ocana Resort with a hard focus on tribal broadband. We had such a great tribal broadband event in Scottsdale earlier this fall, and you're not going to want to miss that. So at Five for Breakfast last week, our guest was Michelle Combs, the executive chairman and CEO of Brightspeed, to discuss leading a transformation, Brightspeed's first 6 months under new leadership. Michelle last week was one of my highlights for 2025. Michelle has been the CEO of many of the top network operators and telecom equipment manufacturers in the world. Most recently, he was CEO of SoftBank, but he held CEO positions at Sprint. He was CEO of Altice, Alcatel-Lucent, Vodafone, France Telecom. He is the Michael Jordan of our industry. And he recently took over. He was an investor, and he took over as the CEO of Brightspeed. And it's exciting to hear how he's moving the focus from such a hard deployment focus to now really on how to really delight customers and customer experience and really differentiate in that area. And I was really excited to hear how he's leveraging AI to maximize their efficiency and the customer experience. So if you missed that session, you can go to our website and watch the replay, or listen to it on SoundCloud if you want to listen to the podcast. Today on Fiber Breakfast, our guest is Roger Entner. He's the analyst and founder of Recon Analytics to discuss why AI's future depends on fiber. In addition to leading Recon Analytics, Roger advises telecom, media, and technology companies on strategic and tactical business issues, as well as public policy issues to enable them to better compete in the marketplace. Under Roger's leadership, Recon Analytics has conceptualized and developed the fastest, largest, and most agile customer insight service available. Before founding Recon Analytics in 2011, Roger was a senior vice president, head of telecom research at the Nielsen Company, at the time, the largest telecom and overall researcher provider in the world. Before that, he was a senior vice president of the communications sector of IAG Research and vice president of North American telecoms for Obum and a director of the Yankee Group's mobile service provider practice. So no shortage of experience in research in our industry. Roger is an expert in the competitive dynamics of the U.S. telecom market and how all the pieces of the telecom operators' value chain, from infrastructure suppliers, software and device vendors, to the customer work together and how they can be optimized. He has a deep understanding of the customer and business customer trends that drive the telecom industry. With all that, welcome, Roger. And for our audience, please type in the questions to go. So with that, let's just kick things off. So Roger,
thank you for having me, and well, what a welcome, and thank you, right?
Yeah, well, happy Thanksgiving, Roger.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Where are you originally from?
I'm originally from Germany. I grew up there. In 1990, I went to the UK, did my undergraduate degree there, and came 93 to the US, and my MBA at George Washington University in Washington. And one of the things missing on that long list that makes me feel old is I worked for LCC, which a lot of people might remember. They were the first guys who were designing and building wireless networks. And so I also have a good understanding of what it takes to build, but predominantly on the mobile side. And so it's really exciting, what we do here. We survey every single week 15,000 people about their telecom usage. 7,500 in mobile, 7,500 in home internet. We survey hundreds of businesses, and we get a really, really deep understanding of what they're doing and how they like their services, right? So, for example, we ask every one of our respondents where do they live, right, by zip code. That's the smallest geography that people remember. And then we ask them who's their home internet provider. And partially with this, we check the quality of our respondent, because there's a very particular fingerprint in every zip code of what is a knowable or what is a likely answer. If somebody tells us they live here in Boston and they have AT&T fiber, we're going to kick them out. Not happening, right? If they live in the Pacific Northwest and they have Verizon Fios, the same way, you're gone. But we asked them then, for example, Net Promoter Score questions in more than 16 dimensions. And so we have a very deep understanding of what provider is providing, is offering what kind of service, and what's the quality and the perception that the customer have on what they get. And this helps and can help a lot of the companies who are overbuilding for fiber. And we're working, for example, with a company called BCTI and making that available. And I think we're the first ones in the industry that allow fiber overbuilder to understand the landscape that they're going into and how satisfied the existing customers are with the existing services, and so they can pick and choose what they do. The other thing that we're doing is we survey every week about 6,000 people on AI, because that's, telecommunication has been so transformative of our lives, but and AI is doing the same thing. It's, I always say the future is already here. It's unevenly distributed. For some of us, it has hit massively, both positive and negative. And for others, not yet, right? And so we look at what are people doing with AI. And again, we ask every one of the people who are answering our AI survey, who's their home internet provider, who's their mobile provider, and how are they using this, right? And I've written 3 articles. They're available on the reconanalytics.com website. They're also available on Light Reading, and you can go a little bit deeper than we were able to discuss here. But some of the things that were like striking to me when I was looking at the data was, first of all, how often people are accessing AI and are using AI really depends on the access technology that they're using. If you're using satellite or DSL, of those who are using satellite or DSL, only around 10% are using AI on a daily basis. For FWA, it's 28%. For cable, it's 32%. For fiber, that's 45% of people are using it on a daily basis. So people who use AI use fiber, and vice versa, right? The other thing that's really interesting is also the primary access method that they're using. When you have a fiber connection, you're using AI 55% of the time on a mobile device versus 45% on a desktop. On satellite and DSL, that's 80 to 90% is mobile. So when you have a really good fiber connection, when you have a good connection, by the way, for cable, it's 10% less who are on cable are using it. The mix is like about 10%. So if you have fiber, it's 55 mobile, 45 on the desktop. On cable, it's 65 mobile, 35% on the desktop. And on FWA, it's 70-30. And so when you're happy and when you have a really solid connection, you're using that connection much more. And what gets even more fascinating is that the use cases are changing. If you're using this mostly on mobile and say FWA, DSL, or satellite, your top three usage cases are web search, topical research, and social media posts. When you use fiber, your top 3 use cases are generating images, data analysis, and writing assistance. For cable, it's writing assistant, topical research, and web research. And so the people who are using and who have fiber are using AI with much heavier use cases, right? And that's really, really fascinating of what we see there.
No, it's amazing. I can imagine, everybody hears me harp on Polk County, Tennessee, and I'm sitting there when I go whitewater kayaking and I have to go to the Hardee's and I can't even get a website to render. It doesn't have enough bandwidth, and the Dollar General doesn't have enough bandwidth to barely do their point of sale. have to go to the Polk County Library to be able to just even do an email. You know, it's very clear that if you're in rural America, you are going to do minimal on the internet because you can't spend all day trying to get a website to come up. I couldn't even do a speed test.
Yep.
It wasn't enough bandwidth. And when you have, like here, I have Live Oak Fiber and I have 5 gig symmetric. You know, my ability to do whatever I want, like you said, be able to spend time with AI and to really understand what AI. I mean, every day, the applications I use AI for keeps increasing because I keep finding new way. Now, my wife, she likes to mess with, you know, the images and do all the, you know, the AI enhancements and things like that. I just mostly focus for work stuff. But
Yep.
yeah, so what are all the things that on fiber that people are doing AI? What are all the use cases are you seeing?
Well, the use cases are, you know, they range. They range from writing help, right? Also, because AI can help you to write much better. The other things that are really, really interesting is one of the differences that we're seeing is there is AI is becoming an answer machine away from being a search engine. It's more an answer engine, right? And so
Yeah, exactly. You know, I just this morning, you know, I'm going to smoke a brisket, all the families in town, and I'm looking at how to use the blower. And instead of just looking at the website, I use AI to here's what I put the code, here's what the, you know, the smoker should be set at. So all the things I need to know for setting up my brisket, it all comes in AI, which changes the complete business model for websites, doesn't it? Because now instead of eyeballs on website, we're scraping websites to have AI answers.
Oh, absolutely. And, you know, one of the things that is fantastic with AI is how interactive it becomes. You know, I had my computer crashed the other day, and an AI, you know, in this case, I used ChatGPT, you know, it walked me through on how to do this best, right? And so it's really fascinating to see how AI becomes quite the character here on how to help us and do this you know, much better. You know, and I think I'll show you something here. 1 second. Let me share my screen for a second. And so, for example, here you see a heat map of a lot of the AI models out there, and you see very easily of how happy people are with different models for different tasks, right? So you have, you know, writing assistance, web search, language translation. Language translation with AI is phenomenal, right? It's the death of translators because it has become so good. You know, all of us getting a lot of content, and AI can very easily summarize written content. It helps you to brainstorm things, creating posts for social media, topical research, adventure and travel planning. One of the, like, for example, one of the free browsers that are now connected with AI, Comet, is giving you lets you move around your trip in a way to do this. Data analysis, search using an image. You can put an image now into AI and it finds it for you. Household planning, you can put you can say I have all these things in my fridge. What meals can I make with this, right? Process automation, tech support, we talked about that. Photo images and generation, video, finance, investing, software coding, you name it. And you see how different AIs have different strengths and weaknesses, right? What's also really, really interesting is when we look at this here, and I'm showing you some of the stuff here with AI, is primary, secondary, tertiary AI. One of the things, I saw, and I don't want to hark on Mark Benioff, but I saw Mark Benioff saying oh, I've used ChatGPT for so long, and now I tried Gemini, the new Gemini, and I'm only using Gemini. And
yeah,
I'm
well, same here. I mean, the Wall Street Journal reported that Gemini overtook ChatGPT with their latest revision, and it is pretty amazing.
Yes, but what you have to, but what that is missing is I view AI models like cutlery, right? There's a knife, there's a fork, there's a spoon, there's a salad fork, there's a teaspoon, and you have to use the right tool for the right job.
So you go through your inventory of AI models or AI applications, and depending on what you need to find out, you use different,
exactly.
GPT or Gemini or whatever.
Exactly.
And you get that from your research on what works best from your surveys?
Yes. And, for example, I use it professionally, for some really deep technical research. So, for example, I'm working right now on building reports on the 500 largest privately held ISPs in the United States. And it's really, really in-depth research. I have the advantage that there are a few of them that are publicly held, so I can use that as a benchmark. And then I can go through all the USF, all the PUC, the USAC, you name it, databases. And if I want to go really, really deep into these databases, ChatGPT 5 is phenomenal. Gemini is much better in writing. Claude is fantastic in summarizing things and contrasting things. And so it is fascinating to see where you have to put the right AI for the right model. Because if you're eating soup, you're not going to use a knife, right? Yeah. And if you use a knife, don't be surprised if it takes a long time and the outcome is really disappointing, right?
So Roger, I was meeting with Ariel Roth, our Assistant Secretary of Commerce, on Thursday in DC, and I did share with her some of your research. So we were talking about AI and kind of, because certainly especially as the White House was putting out the EO on AI, and your research showing that 45% of fiber users use AI multiple times a day, and 75% use fiber use AI at least daily. Where satellite, as you said, DSL and satellite is down less than 10%. So it does matter. NTI and Commerce have been basically, they'll fund any two cans in a string if they can meet the minimum statute under the guise of we don't want the administration to put the thumb on the wheel on innovation. So if you've got innovation on two cans in a string, it should be good enough. But what you're seeing, and this is what one of the questions that came in is you're shown a correlation between fiber subscribers and AI usage, Can you show causation?
Yes, when we have, we've talked now with more than 100,000 people on about AI. And one of the really interesting things that's happening when you have really, really deep set data sets, and if you set up the data sets the right way, is you can go to something called, you can go away from correlation and can go to something called causal inference. Because when you set it up right, to show causality, the gold standard is like a controlled randomized test, right? You give some people a drug and you give some people a placebo, and then you see if the drug works or not, right? When you have really, really large data sets that are set up the right way, these control groups are showing up in the data naturally when they're big enough. Because there's somebody like me, there's somebody, with 340 million people living in America, there's somebody like you somewhere else where there are different circumstances. Same socioeconomic background, but one has access to fiber, the other one has access to cable. And it's not only one, but you have hundreds of them. And then suddenly you can see and you can determine the causality. And there is a causal link that we can see that very clearly in the data. There's a causal link between what both ways. When you have fiber, those people are able to do, and it causes them to do heavier, more sophisticated AI loads. And at the same time, in markets where people like that are have the choice between fiber and another technology, the people who use AI are picking fiber. And so there's a causal link again based on the workloads that they want to do, what connection that they're choosing. And that's fascinating, right? It's one of the early times where we can see this causal link and where it's pulling it through, right? And so
I think that's critically important that, your research is showing that, yeah, if I look at commerce, saying they want, putting states in headlocks saying give up fiber locations for some other technology to have more diversity in your technology deployment. But what you're saying is you're limiting what people can do if they're stuck on LEO or fixed wireless or something less than fiber. So their ability, they would turn more to their phone. That's if they have a lower quality connection, they would spend more time on their phone than on their computer.
Yeah.
Or the home automation or whatever they might need to. One of the questions that came in was, about the differences in energy use for AI through fiber versus wireless. I mean, we know from the Fiber Broadband Sustainability Working Group that fiber uses half the energy that fixed wireless does, and it reduces energy by 97% versus cable. So is that anything that you've asked people about in your surveys?
We have not asked people about the energy use because, to be honest, it goes over the head of 95% of the people, right? They want this thing to work, and the data or the power usage is of tertiary, not even secondary importance. Yeah. But what's really interesting, by the way, is, we ask not only people what they use today, but we also ask what they had previously how long they were there with their current provider, and and if they're planning to switch, and who their preferred next provider is. And what's very interesting here is when you look at it in aggregate, for about 45, people mention FWA as their preferred next provider in 45% of the cases. There's a big drive towards FWA. But when you look at the heavy AI users and say pick DSL, 65% of them want to switch to fiber. Same thing, half of the people who are on cable, on the high AI users want to switch to that, right? Whereas of the heavy AI users, only 8% who have fiber want to switch, right? And so we see how AI is really driving switching behavior.
Interesting. Well, Roger, this is fascinating, and I think that's what gets lost in the conversation with these policy, the government policy folks, is they are looking at just a speed test, and they're not really looking at the applications and how fiber and AI will be transformative to everything we do going forward. So thank you for sharing some of your research. I know that
Thank you.
We could talk to you for hours and just dig down on this, but just really interesting. So I really appreciate everything that you're doing and all your contributions to the industry. And I want to thank everybody for joining us, and look forward to getting back there next Wednesday. We're going to be with Jessica Dine, and she's a very, very intelligent young lady that I met up in DC. She's a policy analyst at New America's Open Technology, and I thought she had some great ideas. So she's going to be talking about defining digital readiness, what broadband leaders need to know. So it's going to be a great session. I look forward to that, and I hope everybody has just a wonderful Thanksgiving.